What's up, guys? Brady Fugel here. Welcome to Deeper Dives, the show for hardcore fans where we don't just dive deep, we dive deeper. Today we're talking Pop Evil, and I'm joined by Josh, the pirate novelist, resident Pop Evil fan. Josh, for one, thank you so much for coming on. And the first question I always ask is tell me how you got into Pop Evil. What was the first album you listened to? Tell me how you got into them, when you got into them, anything like that. Your introduction to the band.
Okay, so my friend, my very close friend at the time, was back in high school. At the ends of high school. So we had talked about a whole bunch of bands. We talked like everything. She initially got me into them. We would send each other random songs. And this was back in the era when you could hide music artists and say, "Hey, just send me the MP3 file. I'll put it on like my iPod."
Hmm.
And I'll just sit and listen to this and say, "Hey, what do you think of that?" And I got into Hey Monday that way, and I got into Pop Evil that way. So there were only two albums out at the time, Lipstick on the Mirror and War of Angels. So I got in just like the early stages of their career. And I'm actually bringing some concert photos here. I don't know, is it showing up on the Zoom there?
Yes.
There is me with Nick Fueling. So it's very early era that I got into them.
All right. Yeah. So with me, I guess I would have gotten into them shortly after you did. So my introduction to the band was Onyx.
Hmm.
I remember the first song I ever heard from them was the track "Beautiful," and uh,
Mm.
and I actually I heard that song because I think my dad used to show me a bunch of music because he's really into like modern hard rock and stuff. So
Hmm.
I think he showed me that song, and I loved it. And I just ended up exploring the rest of that album, Onyx, and then I explored the first two before that. So Onyx was the first album that really hooked me right away. And at the time, I also did really like a good amount of stuff on the first two. And then fast forward, maybe probably a year or so later, that probably happened in 2014, I would say. So probably about a year after Onyx came out. And then fast forward another year and Up released, and that album was like the top, like 2015 me. That was like the pinnacle of music for me when that album Up came out. I absolutely loved it at the time. I was obsessed with it. I was really now like I consider myself more versed in different styles of rock and metal. But then, like, I was really just into hard rock. So this album was like, it like blew my mind in the best way possible. So that was that was my introduction to the band. And so how this is going to work is we're just going to go through the band's chronological timeline, their chronological discography, and we're going to give our thoughts on each album as well as any major events that might happen in the band's timeline, lineup changes, stuff like that. So yeah, the band was formed in Muskegon, Michigan in 2001. They released an independent album titled War of the Roses in 2004, followed by a three-song EP titled Ready or Not. It wasn't until 2008 that they received their first record deal with G&G Entertainment. And the debut album, the actual debut album, major debut, Lipstick on the Mirror, was released in August of 2008. Something that I found interesting that happened shortly after the release of this album is that I saw that the band they played a local show in their hometown of Muskegon, Michigan, and they actually gave several free copies of the album away to their local fans and their hardcore fans that had been following them for years. So I thought that was really cool. So yeah, Lipstick on the Mirror. Josh, what are your thoughts on Lipstick on the Mirror?
It's a solid debut. It's not in my top 10 debuts, but it is something that I go back to quite a bit because there's a couple of tracks on there, not necessarily the singles, but there are some songs that I've seen the band 9 times. So throughout the video, when we get to the certain eras, I'm going to try to show that. But 155 is a song that I've always loved. Like I hear it many times. Seeing a band long enough, you've seen that, and I've heard that a lot of times, and I really like that. A couple of the album cuts that I really liked were Somebody Like You. Another Romeo and Juliet is actually a song I still listen to this day. Like every once in a while, it's always going to be on a playlist. I think that's a really solid crafted early song from them. And One More Goodbye. So it's a very solid debut. It's like I said at the time that I got into them, we only had War of Angels and Lipstick on the Mirror. And I listened to Lipstick on the Mirror more than War of Angels at the time when I was much younger. So that's my mini thoughts on that.
Okay. Yeah, for me, like I remember liking this album a lot when I first listened to it. Like, I remember 155 stuck out to me. Somebody Like You is a song that I really liked at the time, and I actually do still enjoy that one now quite a bit. Pop People's good at writing some like just somber, straight up hard rock songs that are perfect for like a rainy day. And there's definitely a few of those on here. As far as the deep cuts go, I think Hard Highway is still a song that I like off of this record. That's one that kind of is in a similar mold as Somebody Like You in a sense that it's kind of just got those somber, like rainy day type melodies. And Lee's vocals always complement that really well also. So it's a little interesting with this one because since my music tastes have evolved and I have grown some distance from that hard rock post grunge genre. This isn't one that I really enjoy much anymore. Uh,
Hmm.
it's just kind of I think because I've outgrown the sound, but I still listen to some of these songs, and I remember when I first was going through Pop Evil's back catalog because this is one of the Pop Evil is one of the first bands that I really explored on my own because I was young when this came out, and for most of my childhood, I was just listening to whatever my parents or my friends showed me. So this Pop Evil is one of those bands where I really took initiative for the first time and explored them all on my own. So that they still definitely hold that unique spot in my ears, and I guess in my mind's eye, if you want to say that, because a lot of this stuff does register with me as especially nostalgic. So even though I don't really enjoy this album anymore, despite aside from those couple tracks that I highlighted, it's still a record that along with multiple of other Pop Evil's releases, gives me that nostalgic itch. So I definitely appreciate it for that. Stylistically, like I would argue that they would become more and more dynamic. I think probably my biggest issue with this album now is just that it doesn't really reinvent the wheel in any way. Like I wouldn't listen to this album over, a Shinedown or a 3 Days Grace, which stylistically is very similar. Like when you listen to what those bands were doing at the time, like this album just doesn't quite hold up to those, albums for me personally. But I can still see the appeal, and it is their debut. It's where they started, so they definitely still had a lot left to do, a lot left, and they would eventually evolve past what is just this somewhat one-dimensional sound. So I appreciate this album. It's just it's not that much for me anymore at the end of the day, but it was pretty successful, especially for a debut album. Hero was the first single from it, and it peaked in the top 25 of the mainstream rock charts. So that counts for a lot. For a debut, that's actually really good. So it was still pretty successful. And after that record, they ended up signing with Universal Republic Records. They re-released that debut record and began working on the follow-up. Last Man Standing ended up being the lead single from what would be their next album. And I was I was reading the facts about this song. This song made a lot of rounds across the media. Like it was first debuted in an exclusive UFC video. It ended up being on the 2011 Stanley Cup. It was on the 2011 Bears Packers game, multiple episodes of NASCAR, and multiple episodes of ESPN Sports Center. So I mean that song really like spread pretty wide and pretty far. So that was pretty cool to see. And eventually, yeah, War of Angels, the band's second album, dropped in July of 2011. After some delays, it was originally going to be
Hmm.
released in February of 2011. But yeah, it ended up dropping a few months later, July 5th, 2011. So, Josh, what are your thoughts on War of Angels?
This is the one that I don't go back to as often. This would be kind of the one that I don't go back to. And also hearing your thoughts again, my brain was kind of going back. When I do go back to those early two albums, I kind of just go back to the couple of songs that I really like. Um, so that's why I'm highlighting that. Of course, that big single, I love that song. Like it wasn't on this particular, I actually have a set list, mini spoiler for later in the video, but it wasn't on that set list, but anytime that gets played live is one of my favorite moments, hearing them play that. Um, but Broken and Betrayed, Black and Blue, Daisy Chain are really fun songs for me. And I'm actually going back to the last show. I'm actually trying to pull up the set list because they pulled up an older song from there. Okay, yeah, they played an older song. It's not showing up here. Let me see if it's actually on here. I'll show this. This is from my last time I got to see them. This was during let's see here. So this was 2021. So this was a little bit later in our discussion, but they pulled out an older song from that era, and I want to say was Black and Blue. I want to say was I think the one that they did, if I remember correctly. And if anybody was at that Virginia Beach show in 2021, you could correct me in the comments. But yeah, of the actual singles. I don't want to sound like a person that only listens to the deep cuts. I focus on the deep cuts because it's
Yeah.
my thing. But Last Man Standing, I love it. I love Boss's Daughter. For just some reason, I could shut my brain off and listen to Boss's Daughter and just really enjoy it. So this is going to be the one that I don't go back and visit as often.
Okay. Yeah, funny enough, even though I would agree with you, it's probably the one that I revisit the least. I would even say that I would prefer Lipstick on the Mirror slightly over this record. I do still have it on CD. I do still have War of Angels on CD. I think this was one of the first CDs I probably ever bought. I don't remember exactly when, but like I said, I used to really love this album back in high school, at least most of it. And Last Man Standing again, not a song that I would listen to anymore, but it's still got the catchy, groovy riffing. You singled out Boss's Daughter. That is probably one of the songs I would revisit more so than others on
Mhm.
this album, just because it's got the really sharp riffing. It's got that somewhat 80s hair metal vibe to it, which is fitting because Mick Mars is on the song. So that's that's still a song that I think is really sharp, really catchy. My favorite track still on this record has got to be "Monster You Made." It's a single. I think it was the most successful song on this record. But it's an anthem. Like you can anybody who watches this video that maybe isn't into hard rock, which if you've made it this far, that's awesome. But you people can bash a song like this and call it butt rock or whatever or the post grunge stuff. But it's such a catchy song. The emotion actually does really come through. It's still this is one that I still actually enjoy quite a bit from this album. So even though again stylistically it's not really something that I would prefer nowadays. There are several songs on here that, do remind me of, some better times in a nostalgic way. Like I think the song Purple is a good example of that. Uh,
Mhm.
Again, not really a song that I would enjoy listening to now, but like I can't help but play it and instantly think of when I, was again first diving into this band's back catalog at the time, given that Onyx was the first release that I knew from them. So yeah, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on War of Angels. I do slightly, I think, prefer Lipstick on the Mirror over this. I did a discography ranking for Pop Evil actually, and I think this album made the bottom spot.
Mm.
So not really something I'm into anymore, but again, I still respect it. And yeah, so after this album was released, the band did drop a standalone single titled "In the Big House" for
Mm.
the Michigan Wolverines that dropped in August 2011. And after some lineup changes, the band welcomed in guitarist Nick Bueling and drummer Josh Marundi, who used to go by. Do you remember his nickname? He used to go by. He used to go by Chachi Riot.
Chachi Riot,
Chachi
yeah.
Riot. And I was looking, because I was doing my research for this album, and it doesn't list him under that name anymore, which I thought was interesting. It just
Ooh.
says his full name. So yeah, Chachi Riot. And yeah, so they welcomed in two new members, and they began recording the third album in Chicago, starting in January 2013. And just about 2 months later, the band had already released the first single from the record, "Trenches," in late February 2013. The album Onyx later dropped on May 14th. What are your thoughts on Onyx?
It's my favorite album by them. I'm just spoiler. It's my favorite album by them. Now I actually get to show some of the concert photos from this era. So, this was at a festival we used to have here called the Lunatic Luau, and there were two stages. So there was a side stage and a main stage. So you can tell, look how young everybody is in this photo.
Yeah, yeah,
Like just very young at the time, and they blew me away. I mean, I heard some of their songs, but actually going to see them is what actually really cemented my love of their music. Um, I love this shot that I took years ago.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I love concert photography, and there's me meeting Nick. Now I need to move a little further back in this. I'm going to speed here. This is a later show, but all right. So here's the fun story of how I got this.
Oh, nice.
So a couple of years after the Onyx was still that, I think this was just before Up had come out. They played in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is about a 3 hour drive ish from my area. And this was for like a chili wing cook-off for a their local radio station. Now I lived in North Carolina for about a year in Henderson, so it wasn't too far where I'm at now. But we drove. My mom and I go to a lot of concerts, so we drove down for 3 hours to see them play in a small stage, like those trailer stages that people pop up for like county fairs.
Mhm.
They pulled that up, and Poppy was the headliner. It was so cold that night, and it was like damp cold that I don't think it'll actually show up here. But on Lee's head himself, there was steaming. Like the sweat was steaming off of his face. So this is one of my favorite shots I've ever taken of all time. Here, and I have another one printed that's not going to show up in these couple of photos. I just wanted to show a highlight. But this was in the parking lot of a strip club. And it was like the giant strip club in the back. And then where you had to go to the bathroom, there was a tiny antique mall. So it was in the parking lot of an antique mall and strip club.
Interesting. Yeah.
If that ain't the most unique venue I've ever been to, I don't know
Yeah.
what is.
Yeah. That is funny. Yeah.
Tantric also played there as well. Um,
Interesting.
so it was a pretty good lineup at that time. But this album is my all-time favorite pop evil. I have what I call the 10 Club, taking for Pearl Jam. This would be a 10 out of 10 album for me. Like I need to get this on vinyl because this is like my favorite era of music is the 2010 to 2015. I didn't grab a Nightmare, but of around this era, Shinedown Amaryllis, another 10 out of 10 album from me.
That's a great
And
one.
then, of course, Strange Case of Hailstorm,
Okay.
another 10 out of 10 album. So it's that era of music that I love to collect on vinyl specifically because of Onyx specifically. Um, I Divide is actually my favorite song probably off of here if I picked like a deep cut.
A deep cut. Yeah. But a good
Yeah.
one.
Beautiful. Again, I think you talked about that earlier. Sixth Sense, and then Trenches. Like I know it's a big single, but that song has gotten me through so much personally that I could sit here for like 3 hours and talk this album. It's something that I know left to right, up to down. I could sit there, close my eyes, and know every single note. I love this album.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and I would agree with you that it's their best album. This is the one that I placed number one in my discography ranking. I don't remember what I scored it, but it wasn't a perfect score, but it was a high score for sure. Which is especially saying something given what I've said multiple times in this episode already that I'm not as much into just straight up hard rock anymore. But
Mhm.
this album still does a lot for me. I loved it when it first came out because, like I said, this is the album that got me into the band. So the first song I heard was beautiful, and I love the melodies in that song. That's just such a no pun intended beautiful song. But it still has that edge to it too. I think that's something that I thought was interesting. It still has that somewhat aggression to it, just stylistically. But it's a very uplifting and endearing song.
Mhm.
And then after that, Trenches. I mean, the main riff on Trenches is just an absolute monster still to this day. The riffing overall on this album is great. It comes through on other songs like Deal with the Devil and Fly Away has a great main riff too. You singled out Divide. Divide's great. I love that kind of extended like melodic intro that it has, and there's just some great melodies on this album. Torn to Pieces is another beautiful song. That's another one that, like I mentioned earlier, it's like the perfect song for a rainy day. Just in those droopy type melodies, and Lee's vocals on this song are amazing. I love Behind Closed Doors. That's another song that I would say is a favorite of mine from here. The
Mhm.
way that the song just keeps kind of fluctuating in and out of being halftime and double time the whole time is great. It's some great transitions. It isn't for me until the last couple tracks on here, Welcome to Reality and Flawed, that it starts to kind of taper off for me. And those aren't
Mhm.
bad songs. They just, being the last two tracks on here, register to me as more like filler than anything. But overall, this is still an album that I really, really love. And an album that have a good amount of nostalgic attachments to also because like I said, Pop Evil was really like one of the first bands that I explored myself. And I remember being in high school, like I really got into working out in high school for the first time, and I remember like this was the album that I would listen to when I was, first figuring out, how to work out because I was so young at the time.
Mhm.
So I remember like being in my basement, like doing different, core exercises and lifting weights and stuff, and listening to this album. And I was probably like 15, 16 at the time, maybe even younger than that. So it's definitely an album that I still hold a lot of nostalgia towards, and still a record that I really enjoy to this day. And it's also a record that I think sees the band kind of establish more of their own sound as opposed to grabbing from a Shinedown or Hailstorm, like two bands that you just mentioned. I think that's best represented on, a track like Divide or Trenches, where Lee's vocal cadences almost lean into rapping, but not in like an awkward, uncomfortable way. Like it's more just like he utilizes more of a rhythmic approach to doing his vocals while he's still kind of like singing or even maybe even yelling at the same time. I think the vocal approach on this album is just something that is somewhat unique to Pop Evil because it doesn't register to me as like new metal or rap metal. But it also isn't, it's more than just a straight up hard rock style vocal approach. So I think this is the album that really sees Pop Evil establish their own sound, which is another reason why it's probably my favorite record by them. And yeah, so after Onyx, Trenches also became their first number one single. That is a good it's a good fact I should shout out. The band ended up signing with 11-7 Music and began working on their fourth album, which was titled Up, and it was released on August 21st, 2015, led by the lead single Footsteps. And I actually have a CD single for Footsteps. I remember seeing this, and it was like I think it was like $2 at probably Best Buy or FYE or wherever I bought it. And I remember when this song dropped, I was like, again, it was like mind blown because this was the first new song to me as a fan at the time because Onyx already came out when I got into it. So this was the first new single that came out when I was a fan of the band. And the mood of the song, the way the song moves. I love how there's the absence of drums in the first chorus, and then they come in the second chorus, and it hits so hard. It's such a catchy, groovy, syncopated type song rhythmically, and it's still a favorite of mine from them. And yeah, the album Up, like I said, August 2015. What are your thoughts on Up?
Okay, so coming off of one of my favorite albums of all time, you gotta, the expectations were there. And it met those, but not as high for me, pardon the pun, because of one of the songs on the one of the songs on the album. Um, it's one that took a little while to grow on me. Not saying that I was a big music snob back then, but that's one that um, it came to grow on me. And the more I look at it, the more I was like, okay, I don't want to talk too much on individual songs, but the more I come back to it, I was like, okay, I like to Disarray, I like to Take It All, I liked If Only for Now. The only one I really didn't like was Ways to Get High, but even then, that was back when I initially saw that, and now I'm fine with it. I liked Seattle Rain as a deeper cut, and then of course, yeah, let's see here. Putting up Ghost of Muskegon is also a fun one on there. So you're talking about having that first album after becoming a fan. That was, if I remember, I'm not sure if you're on the discussion, the discussion of Paramore's debut album. And I was on like our group, the little sphere that I've been kind of invited into, and I remember Brand New Eyes being that first album, being that first excited new album. So I know that feeling you're talking about. Um, but as I've gone on, the more I've liked it as time goes on. Maybe it was just my mentality at the time. Initially, wasn't like, oh, this is top favorite, but I still enjoyed it. I mean, I'm still a fan now, of course, but I would rank it a little bit lower, not by much, when it turns to comparing from the last album.
Sure. Yeah, and I also kind of understand where you were coming from because, like you said, Onyx was like the pinnacle for you. So having those high expectations for the next album, that does make sense. And I think even I might have at the time needed also some time to grow with this album because they released the four singles, and I loved Footsteps. In Disarray was great. I'm trying to remember the third single. Dead on the Water was the third single, Dead on the Water, and I was mixed on that song. But then they dropped Ghost of Muskegon, the fourth single, which is my favorite song on this album. I absolutely love that song. The melodies are amazing. I have a very distinct memory of the day that song dropped as a single because I was in high school and I was on the cross country team. And I remember literally like waking up for practice at probably 6:30 in the morning. And I saw that they dropped another song. I was like, oh, check it out. I remember literally like being in bed, like listening to it, not wanting to get out of bed. And I was like, holy shit, this song is amazing. And I got out of bed and I went to cross country practice. And I was literally the entire practice had this song on repeat in my headphones, the entire practice. So I probably listened to it like a good 30 times the first day it came out. Like, and so it was instant for me. I don't know if I've ever had a song like register that heavily with me the first day it came out. So I did have some high expectations for this album also, given just how much I love the singles. And I do think it still needs some time to grow on me. And listening back now, I think there's a couple tracks on here that don't do much for me anymore. Like I think Core is kind of forgettable. If Only for Now is a song that never really did a whole lot for me, just because later in the record you get better ballad attempts. Uh, Lux is fine, I guess. And later in the record though, you get Seattle Rain, which is an amazing, amazing ballad. It's just again some beautiful and almost like tropical sounding melodies that I think are great. Another, I mean, it's in the name this time. Another perfect song for just a gloomy, rainy day. And I also love the closer on here, Till Kingdom Come. This is just like a really somber, mid tempo, um, straight up post grunge style song with that kind of modern alternative rock flair to it. And another one that I really like. Another one that's perfect for a rainy day, as is much of this album. But the songs on here are just so catchy. I did put this in my discography ranking at the number two spot. So I don't think it quite measures up to Onyx, but it still is a record that overall I really enjoy. And this one maybe even holds more of a special place in my heart than Onyx does because it was the first one that I was like a fan for, and my nostalgic imagery for this album is just so vivid and so clear and so memorable, especially with Ghost of Muskegon. Like I said, like I can still to this day literally picture me running that exact route that I ran in cross country practice with that song playing. So it's stuff like that could be so profound with music, and then when a song can do that for you, like it's always going to be a favorite. So yeah, and I also do have this. I'm not sure if I showed it. I also do have this one on CD.
Mhm.
Comes in a little sleeve.
Yep. I love that little sleeve. I didn't get a chance to get mine. I also like the packaging on that one because it's like a little booklet,
Mhm.
if I remember correctly.
Yep. Yes. And yeah, so after Up, there's one more lineup change, I guess, because Josh Trashy Riot Murdy did depart from the band
Hmm.
after this album. I remember being disappointed by that because I thought
Me
he was a
too.
great drummer, especially live. Because I think I did see them live twice with him. I don't remember exactly when, but I'm pretty sure I saw them live twice with him, and then once after. But he was replaced by drummer Haley Kramer, and the band eventually worked on what would be their fifth album. Yeah, and the self-titled Pop Evil album was released in February of 2018, February 16th. What are your thoughts on the self-titled?
I enjoy it. I like it a little as time has gone on, I've liked it a little bit more. Here is from the CD, Haley.
As
This
well.
when I showed this, I didn't get to meet them, but I bought the signed CD. This era was when I actually got to meet them and tell them about how many times I've seen them.
Awesome.
And even then, Haley was just a sweetheart. She was awesome to me. And they all liked the purple color on this. And I think that's a very pop evil purple.
Yeah. They
I,
wrote a song about purple, right? I mean,
yeah. And then of course I have the vinyl. It is gray. And what's interesting is hang on, I'm pulling up here. Nothing But Thieves is its own side, which is interesting. Like two of these, and I think the closing track Rewind. Yeah, those were two that I don't know why they did that, but it's interesting. But Waking Lions, another song that I go back to in my brain when I think of Pop Evil. Colors Bleed is another one that I really like. Nothing But Thieves. I always remember the drumming in Crime to remember that like the drumming of that is something that I've always liked. I would put this probably at third
Okay.
in my own rankings. Yeah, so it's there's a lot of memories now, especially when you've been a fan as long as I have. This hat right here, I'm trying to point the hat right there. I got when I saw them just a little before this time frame. When you've been with a band a long time, it's kind of hard to go in individually and think back to those eras because they've always been in my life. And yeah, I was a little sad when Chachi left. And what was really fun was I remember at least one of the shows they had a giant Detroit Red Wings flag behind him, which I thought was really interesting. I always think of the Detroit Red Wings logo and him drumming for Pop Evil. It's always going to be burned in my brain. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one as well.
All right. Yeah. So with me, I remember this album came out. I was now a senior in high school when this came out. And this is another one that even though like I'll elaborate later, that even though I don't place it in the upper tier of their discography, this is another one that I actually have very clear memories associated with. And there's still a few songs on here that I absolutely love. One thing I really like is how they brought back some of that rap metal influence that was slightly present on Onyx, but they did it even more so with this record. I mean, it's blatant in the tracks "Colors Bleed" and "Art of War." "Art of War" is just as about as Rage Against the Machine as a band can get without being Rage Against the Machine. But it's
Mhm.
it's it's great. I love the energy in it. "Colors Bleed" brings in some vicious double bass drumming, and it has a surprisingly well executed mood shift when you get that kind of extended melodic bridge section.
Mhm.
So yeah, some nice like stylistic or structural stuff going on there, which especially in a genre like hard rock just really mixes things up really well. And then you got your heavy cuts on here: "Waking Lions," "Ex Machina," two
Mhm.
songs that very catchy. And "Nothing But Thieves" I think is a great deep cut from this album. That's still one that I enjoy. Some very energetic drumming, like you said. The drums also really register with me. They have a great swing to them. It's got that kind of extended ambient intro again. So yeah, that's another one that I really like from this record.
Mhm.
One that I didn't like at first, but actually prefer now quite a bit is "A Crime to Remember."
Mhm.
Because this one was one that 'cause I used to not like pop music at all, and it's still not really a genre that I enjoy. But I used to like detest pop music when I was when this at the time this album came out. And I remember this is just one of the tracks on here that takes more from pop music in a way that it maybe like an Imagine Dragons in a sense, something like that. But as the years have gone by, like I actually really have grown to enjoy the melodies from this song. It's got some great melodies. It actually does have some unconventional drum grooves in there from Haley. I enjoy that as well.
Mhm.
And even like lyrically, I think this is one of the more powerful Pop Evil songs that they've released, especially on this album. I'll sing out "Birds of Prey." That's another song that I really like from this record.
Mhm.
Um, all these songs are tracks that I, again, have vivid memories of like being at track meets. Since this one dropped in February, this was around the time that indoor track season started. So I remember being
Mhm.
in like my field house at the school with it was so crowded because it was so small and there was like four different schools there at this track meet. And I remember being downstairs in like the training room, like stretching and stuff, listening to songs from this album.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is another one that even though I don't really enjoy it quite as much as other ones, there's still songs that I really do enjoy, and I still have
Mhm.
those memories with it. There's some mid-tier tracks like "God's Damn" and "Rewind." I think are kind of mid-level for me. Definitely reminiscent of their early material. They sound like something that would have been on "Lipstick on the Mirror," maybe "War of Angels" to me, just stylistically.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a couple tracks that I just don't like on this album.
Mhm.
The worst one by far for me is "When We Were Young." I absolutely hated that song when it came out. I was like, I really hated it, and
Yeah.
nowadays I still don't like it. I re-listened to all these albums in preparation for this, and yeah, I still not a fan of this one. And then "Be Legendary" was one that I think I tolerated and somewhat enjoyed at the time, but now listening to it, it doesn't do anything for me. I just think it's a little corny. It's kind of like one of those WWE show attempts, like theme song attempts for Pop Evil. which a lot of bands similar to Pop Evil I think were doing at the time. But yeah, so somewhat of a mixed album, but it still definitely has some high points, and it's still a record that I enjoy overall.
I have one thing also to say. Kato produced this one, if you know that name.
Okay. Yeah, I
Uh,
did. I was looking at the producers for this album. I think I know they were worked with Johnny K for a few.
yeah, Kato, this would be good for Rocco because Pretty Reckless.
Oh
Like
yeah. Okay.
the producer who worked with the Pretty Reckless. So that's, I was trying to remember why it was special because Kato worked on that. I just wanted to, before we moved on to the next album, I just wanted to put that little
Yeah,
bit out there because you know we would get a comment from him if we didn't mention it.
probably. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, so after the self-titled release, the band toured, went back in the studio yet again, and in April of 2020, they released the double single of Work and Let the Chaos Reign, which were two very different songs from each other. That's the one thing that I most remember when these songs dropped, like right when COVID was at its peak. Um, November 2020, several months later, they released another single, Breathe Again. And then eventually, Versatile, their sixth album, was released in May of 2021, over a year after the release of those first two singles, the double singles. Um, and yeah, this is another record that I would place in a very similar level as the self-titled because there are some songs on here that I really, really love, and there's a few that I really do not like. So, what are your thoughts on Versatile?
Same.
Yeah.
I've gone through liking it and not
Mhm.
liking it and not liking it. Work is my least favorite Pop Evil song. Like
Yeah.
when I first heard that, I wish I would have had a fly on the wall reaction recording when I heard that. I'm like, what is this? Now, this album, this is where this comes in. This is the where I got to see them. It was Deal with the Devil, Let the Chaos Reign, Torn to Pieces, Survivor Work, 155, Footsteps, Be Legendary, Take It All, Breathe Again. So like, but what's really cool is they pulled out the singer from Devour the Day to do some backup vocals for part of this. I
Yeah.
didn't even kind of this. So I mean, I have this is you see I have the tour for the versatile. So it is pun intended versatile when it comes to certain things on there. But if I had to pick I just put work as my least favorite. That's all I really put on this because this is the one that I have to this is like a forgettable album for me, if I'm being completely honest. Out of their albums, I would rank this pretty low. Um, I'm going back and trying to remember that, like, Let the Chaos Reign, I thought was a decent opener track, but I was like, okay, they're slipping a little bit, at least in terms of my fandom of everything. So, mainly because of work, it pulls it really down for me. Like, just really down for me, if I'm being honest.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really fair. I remember when the first double single dropped because like it was in the height of COVID. So like any new music that I was getting when COVID was happening, like I was all over. And I remember listening to that double single and thinking like, okay, Let the Chaos Reign is it's fine. It just sounds a little undercooked, if anything. And then Work is just an absolute atrocity of a song. Definitely a contender for their worst song. I thought it was funny how it was on the set list that you saw that you just pulled up, and I was like, well, that's probably that was probably when you went to the bathroom or something or grabbed a drink or something.
Believe it or not, work live is better than in studio.
Huh.
Like hearing it live is tolerable,
Hmm.
but I do not like the studio version.
Yeah, I can guess I can kind of see that because I can see how it could be more like dynamic and explosive live. But no, the studio version of the song is absolutely terrible. I really hate it. Definitely the worst song on this album. And there's, like I said, there's some tracks that I really like, and then there's a few that are just kind of forgettable, like Stronger the Time Is Now, Raise Your Flag, Fire Inside. Kind of just forgettable tracks overall. Set Me Free too, one of the more forgettable ones. These tracks aren't like bad for me. They're just really, really just vanilla in a sense, just in the hard
Mm,
rock landscape. As far as highlights, there is a good chunk of tracks that I really like. One that I surprisingly really enjoyed at the time and still like is the track Inferno. It
mm,
has like this kind of slow tension and drama in it that I think actually works in its favor. I think Lee's vocals work really well with it. It almost, I don't know why, but it almost gave it. I remember listening to the song, and it almost gave me like Adele vibes.
Mm.
I don't know why, but it just did, and it kind of worked. It was something different for them. It was splitting things up on this record. It was one of the moodier tracks on here, which is always something I like in a hard rock record. And then yeah, once you get to the second half of the record, that's when the highlights really come in for me. Like I love "Worst in Me." That's probably my favorite track from here. Just a great chorus, relatable lyrics, everything like that. Human Nature and Survivor are both two kind of just stomping mid-tempo alt rock songs that I think are pretty catchy and really memorable. They have some great melodies in them. Survivor, I think, gives me like a Foo Fighters vibe a bit,
Mm.
especially like in the bridge when Lee lets out that scream. That came off very like Dave Grohl to me in a good way.
Mm.
And I also like Same Blood. Again, lyrically, one of the more meaningful Pop Evil songs that they have put out, which, I respect that. There's a guest feature on this song, too, on Same Blood, that isn't given credit, which I thought
Mm.
was interesting. But I'm pretty sure, and I couldn't even find out who it was, but I'm pretty sure it is the guy from Crown the Empire, I think.
Ah.
But he's not listed as a feature, which I thought was interesting. But this, no, that's another good song. So and Breathe Again is enjoyable, too. So I guess that's 6 songs on a 12 song album that I like. And, the other 6 songs are just either really forgettable or in the case of Work, they're just bad, unlistenable. But yeah, overall, mixed album. I would say I'm pretty sure. I don't remember exactly what I did for the discography ranking, but I think I would slightly prefer the self-titled over this one. But I
Mm.
do still, because there are 6 songs I like on here, I do still prefer this one over the first two albums. So yeah, that's where I would place it. After the release of Versatile, bassist Matt Dorito and drummer Haley Kramer left the band and were replaced by Joey Walser and Blake Allison, aka Devour the Day. Yeah, so because they were a two-man band and now they both joined Pop Evil now. So and that is now the current lineup as well. Only about a year after the release of Versatile, the band unleashed another single, Eye of the Storm. And I remember when that song dropped, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, is this going to be another album or is this like a B-side from Versatile? Because I couldn't really tell. I couldn't really tell. But it did end up being the lead single for the next album, and Skeletons was released in March of 2023. What are your thoughts on Skeletons?
Okay, this was back to the if this was a bigger step up, especially because of Devour the Day. Devour the Day, one of my like I remember hearing one of their albums and just being completely blown away. And they came out with some recent tracks semi recently, I
Yeah,
think a couple of
I,
years ago.
I I reviewed their EP actually a
I
couple.
loved that EP. I so knowing that Devour the Day is kind of ingrained in the backbone of that really helped to solidify my love of it. Um, and it was Signals. The album that I loved was Signals from Devour the Day. So I remember being blown away by that and then seeing him sing like, oh man, I wish I could see Devour the Day live. Little do I know that probably the next time I see them, I'm going to basically see Devour the Day, but with
Yeah,
with the band. Of course, Wrong Direction because of Devour the Day is going to be on there. But I really liked Raise Your Flag. Uh, Wrong Direction. I said Skeleton. Like the, I'm looking through here. The title track I liked. I liked Eye of the Storm. This was like, okay, this is a bigger step up for me. And nothing against Haley or anything. I don't know what was going on with Versatile for me, but I would put this kind of in the middle of everything. But this was like, okay, this is the pop evil that I like. This is the kind of stuff that I like, okay, it's a little bit of a new direction. It's a little bit forward. Maybe it was just my brain and the way I process music. It's like nothing was production bad in Versatile. I want to say minus work for me. We like to clown on work. But for me, this was like, okay, this is a return to like a little more return to form from what I like from them, but evolved, if that makes any sense.
yeah. I agree. I do think you really do feel that energy shot in this album that the guys from Devour the Day, I think, added to it. And yeah, there's that's obviously most present, like you said, on the track Wrong Direction, because Devour the Day actually is a feature on here, given the co-lead vocals. As far as other tracks on here, Eye of the Storm, I still enjoy. Worth It is amazing. That's probably my
Mhm.
favorite track on here. I just such warm, like and soulful melodies. The song is really, really soulful overall. Just a very endearing track. And the heaviness makes its way back into this album pretty prominently. You hear it on Paranoid Crash and Burn. You hear it on Eye of the Storm, especially in that like second verse when you get those like pounding, cracking snare drums. And then Dead Reckoning, the heaviest track on the album, it features Ryan from Fit for a King with saying it
Hmm.
has like an actual like metalcore type section, which I thought was pretty well executed. Even the closer, Raging Bull, featuring Zillion, I think is pretty heavy overall for Pop Evil. Um, and yeah, other cuts on here. The title track's solid. Circles is a good one. It's one of one of the tracks in here that's more like straightforward to the point, but it's just so like full sounding and sonically rich, especially in that chorus. And yeah, this is one that I would say I prefer over the last two we talked about, over Versatile and the self-titled. Definitely not quite up to par with Up or Onyx for me, just because there's a handful of tracks that I'm not crazy about. Like I don't like Sound of Glory. Um, the title track Skeletons has somewhat waned in appeal to me. It's just kind of mid for me, and then yeah, but the rest of the track, the rest of the album overall is solid. Who We Become, solid track, and and there's the intro I guess on here, Arrival, that doesn't do a whole lot, but it's an intro track. But yeah, overall, this is one of their better albums. I'd put it probably at like 3 or 4. I'd probably put it at number 3 in the discography when I did that ranking, if I were to guess. Um, so yeah, and they put out that album, and then Devour the Day was officially in the band after this album. It's pretty cool. And then they released their most recent album, What Remains, in April of last year. I did a review of that album as well. And even though it was one that I was fairly mixed on, I think I probably would have loved it if it came out 10 years ago. So, if anything, if anybody watched that review, that album was probably more of a victim of circumstance than anything, because it is. I remember being skeptical going into it because they were saying it was going to be their heaviest album yet, and I was like, okay, when bands say that, it's
Yes.
usually not their heaviest album. But this album actually is their heaviest album. Like I would argue, there's some genuine like actually heavy stuff on here. Like Death Walk is like this down tuned like sludgy track, which I do think this album was slightly overproduced in certain points. That's something that I criticized it quite a bit of in my review of it. And Deathwalk does kind of have that because Lee's vocals sound so synthesized. That was my biggest frustration with this album. Just Lee's vocal production made him sound so like robotic and synthesized. And like he's a great vocalist. Like I just don't think it was necessary. But this track overall was pretty enjoyable. It's got the double bass grooves. It's got the really down tuned, chunky guitars. The Bullet That Missed, Zero to None, groovy riffing in both of these songs, and I really enjoy both of them. Lee does definitely do some more harsh vocals on this album overall, which is something else I like. Side Effects has some really catchy, energetic parts too. Title track has some energetic parts. So overall, what are your thoughts on What Remains?
You hit the nail on the head for me. But unlike when we were talking about in the Alter Bridge, like the video gamey feel, I don't it really depends on the modulation of vocals whether I like it or not. And to me, this was in contention. There were some other albums of my favorite of last year. Like I really liked it. I was like, okay, this is like I put it back to form for me, even though I already said that. But I was like, I remember first hearing like I thought back, I'm like, man, this is like what I felt like when I first heard them. Like there was some energy, there was some stuff to really like and sink my teeth into with this
Awesome.
one.
That's awesome. I'm kind of jealous, actually. That's awesome.
But I was like, yeah, I was like, I've been a very long time fan, and even I was a defender of them back when Work came out, and everybody was clowning on that. I'm like, I will defend Pop Evil till the day I die. And for some reason they don't show up in like my brain as like one of my favorite bands, but now covering this conversation, they got to be one of my favorite bands now, just because of the long history that I've had with them. That this was going back to a form that I knew them, that I could say, "Hey, I'm proud to be a fan. Let me show you with these groupings of songs why I'm a fan."
Yeah. I think that's valid. I could definitely hear that too. Like I could see why a lot of, old school Pop Evil fans would probably love this record. And like I said, I think for me, it's more just my personal music taste evolving over the years. But that being said, like there's still some tracks that I really liked on here, like Bullet That Missed and Side Effects and Zero to None. Both were on like I have a playlist where I'm constantly switching out songs. So like if I hear a new song and I like it, I'll add it to it, and then I'll burn out and I'll take it off. These three songs were on that playlist for quite a while last year.
Hmm.
So those are definitely my top three from this one. And overall, this is definitely one of the more consistent records. Aside from Knife for the Butcher, which does lean into more of that like pop Imagine Dragons style, like we've heard from top people in the past. The rest of the album is pretty much straight up heavy hard rock most of the time. Even I think I even classified it in my review as modern metalcore at times because of just the structures, the fact that Lee does use more harsh vocals on here, the fact that it's so heavy, and it kind of contrasts heavier verses and clean choruses, which is a staple of the metalcore genre, obviously. And there's still a few tracks that maybe I would put on the mid level, like Criminal, Enough is Enough, Overkill, tracks that I would probably put on that mid tier, like not bad, but nothing that I would really remember,
Hmm.
nothing that really registered with me. The only track that I really didn't like is Knife for the Butcher. But aside from that, like it was either songs that were okay or songs that I enjoyed. So, and I do think the main thing that weighed it down was the production for me.
Hmm.
This is why I think I scored it like slightly below average. But again, I still like it better than the two debut records. This is one that I would put probably on the same level as self-titled and versatile overall. If I was doing tier lists, I think those records would all be in like
Okay.
the C maybe B tier. Um, so yeah, that is the band's entire discography up to this point. So before we say goodbye, we are going to give our top three pop evil songs. And we're gonna start Pirate with your number three.
Okay, I need to go through this because
It's a big decision.
155. Like it's I when I go and play guitar, when I just go and I there's like a handful of songs that I go and I play. Long Road by Pearl Jam, Simple Man by Leonard Skinner, Pop My Capo on do 155. Uh, there's a couple of songs that I do, but this one has always stuck with me throughout the years. I would say 155 would be my number three.
All right, solid pick. Yeah, it's a fun song overall. It's a fun song. Even though I'm like I said, that style doesn't do a whole lot for me anymore. Like it's a fun song, like to
Hmm.
drive and roll down your windows to when the weather's nice. I mean, 155. It's literally in the title.
Yeah.
I can definitely see it. My number three, I'm gonna give to Worth It from Skeletons.
Mhm.
So a newer pick, but I kind of like what you said about What Remains, how it reminded you of how you felt when you first heard Pop Evil. I remember hearing that song, and obviously it's much newer, and I was repeating it nonstop, and it reminded me of what I said about Ghost of Muskegon, how I was repeating it nonstop the whole day. It was almost not quite, but it was almost the same thing here, just because I love the melodies in the song so much. They're just so soothing, so soulful, and it's I still have now. Obviously I was older, and I remember I've always done like the door dashing and the Uber Eats as like a side hustle.
Hmm.
I remember I was doing that when I first listened to Skeletons when the album first came out, and I heard
Hmm.
Worth It. I heard Worth It, and I was like, wow, that was actually amazing. And I just kept repeating it. So I remember driving around like driving around doing the deliveries around here and having this song on repeat, and I still love it. This is a song that I've actually revisited a lot the last almost 3 years now. So yeah, that's my number three. What's your pick for number two?
I'm tied between two tracks right now.
Okay, it's hard.
So I am going to do a coin flip.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Heads will be this one, tails will be that one.
And a disclaimer to anyone who watches: I think these top three songs are always subject to change.
Hmm.
That's something I've said in past episodes of the series too.
Okay, I'm going to go with my gut on the initial one, Divide.
Divide your number two.
No, Divide's going to be my number two.
That's
Uh, Probably not heard too often in the live sphere, but I
No,
remember hearing that. I might have heard it live
I think
because
I
I've
did.
seen.
I think I heard it live. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I've seen almost every single iteration of the band except for their current lineup. So yeah, I more likely have. But just the beginning of it to it, and then kicking into it, and then slowly coming off. To me, it's just that perfect mix of a track.
yeah,
Like th that. The other one, by the way, was Waking Lions, so it was between those two. But I ultimately picked Divide for my number two.
gotcha. Yeah, Divide. It's a dynamic song for sure. Like I said, I like the extended melodic intro. It's kind of build that tension, and then the song does have a lot of up and down dynamics, and even like
Mhm.
the verses, which are calmer. Like Lee's vocals are still rather aggressive in there, just doing those almost rap like cadences, and
Mhm.
the song it walks that line between being somewhat uplifting, but also being kind of like tense and angsty at the same time, which is kind of a hard balance to pull off. But I think Divide does that pretty well. My number two has got to be Trenches. It's just the main riff. I remember literally hearing that and being like, holy shit, that was awesome. Like being young, listening to that for the first time. And it's still like, for a hard rock song, like that is a really heavy groove. Just because with that squealing pinch harmonic thrown in there, like absolutely love it. The song is nonstop full of energy the whole time. It's just I this is a song that like I'm thinking of it now. I'm like, why haven't I listened to it in a while? I'm like, I need to put this shit on more. But no, great song, great chorus, really catchy vocal cadences overall, crushing bridge section with that squealing guitar solo, and probably the song, like the first song I ever listened to from them was Beautiful, but
Mhm.
this is probably the song that made me a fan, I would say. So moving on to number one now. What is your pick for the best Pop Evil song?
Trenches.
Precious. Yes. Oh,
Trenches.
yeah.
It's always been there for me. I mean, other than Waking Lions, it is their closer.
Yeah.
Like this is the song that gets you hyped at the very end of the show. Like everybody sings along with it. The energy is crazy when they actually bring this out. And you've covered everything I would have said, but it's the song lyrically that has been there for me. Unlike also shout out to when I mentioned Red Sun Rising in
Mhm.
that one
Yeah.
collaboration. I pulled that out just so I can do this. The other side.
Yeah.
Those two songs together have gotten me through so much of my life.
Yeah. That's great. And they are lyrically similar, I think, too. Like
Hmm.
you're going through it. That's what both songs kind of are like. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to bring that out because of the mention of trenches. So
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And something that we didn't touch on when we talked about Onyx was the Onyx trilogy. Do you remember the Onyx
yes.
trilogy with the
Yes, I do.
videos and stuff? So I think it was, I don't remember the exact order. I think it was Trenches, Deal with the Devil, Behind Closed Doors. I think that was the order of it. But what they did was they basically they arranged all three tracks and did music videos for all three tracks to where they were like meant to be played sequentially and talk about things like mental illness. So Trenches focuses on just like overall getting through the drudgery, getting through the whatever mental health stuff you're going through, and then Deal with the Devil talks about drug addiction, and Behind Closed Doors talks about just secluding yourself. So I wish I brought that up at the time, but I'm glad I remembered it. But yeah, no, Trenches, amazing song. My number one, it's probably obvious based on what I said earlier. It's got to be Ghost of Muskegon. Uh,
Hmm.
I This is one of my most played songs ever. Like period. Like not even just from Pop Evil. Like it's I gotta check on my Spotistats app, but it's at least probably number two.
Hmm.
It's either my number one or number two most played song ever, just because I listened to it so much on the day it came out. And it's been over 10 years now since that song came out. So I've had a
Hmm.
lot of time to re-listen to it. And it's like it's such a catchy song. It's got amazing melodies. It's packed with emotion, and like it's such an easy song to repeat. Some songs are just really really easily repeatable, which is a great
Hmm.
quality. And this is one of those songs. Like it's short, straightforward, to the point, but it's endlessly memorable the entire time. It's lyrically relatable. It's sonically amazing. The performances are amazing. It's just this is like a perfect song for this style in particular. And this is coming from someone yet again who isn't really into this style anymore.
Hmm.
Can't stress that enough.
Oh,
So
by the way, Behind Closed Doors, Deal with the Devil Trenches,
that
Onyx
was the
Trilogy.
order. Okay, gotcha. That actually makes sense because behind closed doors, you're talking about kind of being secluded, and then trenches, you're talking about pushing through it. So that does
Hmm.
actually make sense. When I think about it. But yeah, that's our top three Pop Evil songs. And the last question before we depart is going to be, what do you personally want to hear from Pop Evil next on their next album?
Oh, that's tough. Well, speaking of that, they are releasing What Remains Deluxe
Yeah,
this
that's right.
year.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of bonus tracks. I kind of want to hear a little bit more of them going the direction that they had with What Remains, but a little more darker. Like there was a time when metal was going a little more, I mean, leading into the rap metal, everything I like that, but there was a time I think when there was more like electronica bleeding in. And that was at the time that I wasn't necessarily into electronica music as much as I am now. So I'm like, I want to hear some darker, heavier stuff because Devour the Day is in there. I want to hear more of that influence in there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think I would say similar things. I'm a metalhead. I would love to see
Hmm.
this band get heavier. I'm not sure if they will get heavier than they did on What Remains because that album was already like pretty like really heavy for them. But you know, if they could do a similar style like that, dial down the production by honestly a lot for my taste. Let Lee's vocals shine on their own without caking on all the effects. Maybe emphasize riffs a little bit more because when they did that on What Remains, those were the songs that jumped out at me the most. And just, you know, make like an all-out modern hard rock or even a modern metalcore record classifiably because metalcore has, you know, progressively gotten more melodic overall. So I think they're at that meeting point now, these two genres. And I think if Pop Evil were to do that again and, you know, keep writing the inspired lyrics and keep the energy going, then I think they could put out a record that I would still really enjoy. So that's what I would hope to hear from them
Hmm.
next. And that's it for this episode of Deeper Dives. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Subscribe to Pirate's channel. He does a bunch of vinyl related stuff and reviews. He just did his top 10. You just did your, was it
Hmm.
top 10 or top 20?
Top 21.
Top 21, that's what it was. So yes, subscribe to Pirate's channel. I subscribe to my channel. I'll have multiple more episodes of Deeper Dives coming up. And yeah, if you're a Pop Evil fan, please comment below. What are your thoughts on their discography? What are your favorite albums? How would you rank them? What are your favorite songs? Anything like that. Any response to anything we've talked about in this video. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, see you guys later. Peace.